The vacuum of space stretched infinite beyond the forward viewport as Commander Rhea Caldwell watched the readouts flicker and shift on her console. She stood on the bridge of the ESS Vigilant, one of Earth's mid-sized patrol ships assigned to security runs along the borders of galactic Concord space. The Vigilant was not alone, for other Earth ships drifted in close formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of stars. Rhea's expression was set in grim determination. They'd picked up a distress signal, an old Concord protocol, repeating in a loop, and so far, no one else seemed interested in responding. For a moment, she closed her eyes and allowed herself a silent reflection. In the grand scheme of the Concord, Earth was a newcomer, barely recognized as a fully contributing member. Earthlings were tolerated because they had proven themselves resourceful enough to develop FDL drives and some advanced weapon systems. Yet the rest of the Concord liked to remind them that humankind had arrived late to the table. Being overshadowed, Rhea thought with faint irony, had its advantages. It let Earth choose certain battles and certain allies. But as she looked at the incoming signals data, she felt a pang of responsibility she couldn't ignore. It had all begun a day prior, when the Vigilant first detected the automated beacon. The signal carried a highly compressed code, recognized by Concord emergency channels, but apparently disregarded. The official line from the Central Concord Council was that the cost of investigating a remote system with no strategic value was too high. If such signals existed in that region, they were to be low priority. That phrase, Rhea thought, was little more than a euphemism for ignoring the plight of those who might be calling for help. She turned to her comms officer, Lieutenant Marvin Jalen, who was hunched over the console. "Anything new from that signal, Lieutenant?" He shook his head. "Same repeating code. I've tried boosting the resolution, but I keep getting static combined with a series of pulses. The code is definitely from Ravka 9 in the Arathon sector. Concord files list it as an unimportant star system with minimal colonization. Possibly agricultural communities, but no major presence from any advanced species. Except someone is there," Rhea said quietly, "or used to be. Enough to send a distress call." Marvin shrugged helplessly. "Yes, ma'am. The question is whether the call is weeks old or brand new. The echoes of the pulse suggest it has been playing on loop for some time." Rhea nodded and pivoted on her heel to face the rest of the bridge. "Keep monitoring. If the signal changes, I want immediate updates." Her next thought was to wonder if anyone on the Concord's main station, Arcturus Station, had given this a second thought. They had told her, in no uncertain terms, that Earth was to patrol only the assigned corridor. Diverting to investigate a low-priority call on the fringes of known space was outside her official orders. But she couldn't shake the sense that something was seriously wrong. If it was an intentional code on a Concord frequency, it meant someone used or at least had knowledge of official Concord protocols. Even if it was old, standard practice dictated they check. The Council's complacent refusal made her blood stir. She thought back to the most recent meeting at Arcturus Station with the Concord delegates. They were in a large, circular chamber with luminous panels lining the walls, representing each of the major species. The tall, willowy Adari from the galactic core, the amphibian-like Quoras, the spindly-limbed Oroans, and others. Earth's seat was near the outer ring, an unsubtle reminder of its relatively new membership. Rhea had been summoned to present her findings about a smuggling ring that might be using the Arathon sector for contraband, but the Council's interest in her briefing had been lukewarm. They preferred discussing shipping lanes near wealthier star systems. At the end of that meeting, Rhea had mentioned, almost as an aside, that her ship had detected a possible distress call. To that, Counselor Verim from the Lyric Domain had responded, "Commander Caldwell, we appreciate your diligence, but the Arathon sector is not of pressing importance. The Council has no evidence of any strategic or economic value in Ravka 9. We must devote resources where the return is more certain." She had tried to argue that ignoring the call was irresponsible, but that only earned her an indulgent smile from Verim and a gentle reminder that Earth was still an associate member, one whose voice was overshadowed by the major powers. The final verdict had been, If no major threat or interest is at stake, we cannot authorize a full expedition. Your instructions remain to secure standard shipping corridors. Rhea had left that meeting stewing with frustration. Something about a distress call going unanswered clawed at her sense of duty. She'd spent years rising through Earth's newly formed space military force, proving that humans weren't just reckless upstarts. She believed with all her heart that Earth's seat at the Concorde demanded they behave responsibly, to do for others what older members of the Concorde seemed to have forgotten how to do. Now, standing on her bridge, she stared through the viewport, imagining the star that housed Ravka 9. She recalled the coordinates, a small yellow star on the galactic fringe, accompanied by an unremarkable cluster of asteroids. If the sensor data was correct, traveling there would mean a detour outside her assigned corridor. She exhaled and tapped the side of her command chair. Lieutenant Jalen, open a channel to Earth HQ. Priority secure line. He nodded, pressing a series of buttons to establish a link. There was a hiss of static, then a crisp, authoritative voice. Colonel Bryce at Earth Central Command, responding to the vigilant. Go ahead, Commander Caldwell. Rhea inhaled. Colonel, we have a situation. We picked up a distress call from Ravka 9 in the Arathon sector. Concorde leadership has deemed it low priority. I suspect they won't dispatch help. I'm requesting clearance to investigate. A pause crackled on the line. Rhea imagined Bryce reviewing data, perhaps scanning an internal memo. Then came his voice, measured but supportive. Commander, you know Earth status with the Council. If we divert forces, it could lead to political friction. That said, we trust your judgment. Is there strong reason to believe this is genuine? It's a Concorde-coded call, Colonel. Possibly an entire population in danger. If we ignore it, we risk letting an innocent civilization be destroyed or remain stranded. Bryce was silent for a moment. Understood. Officially, I can only advise caution. Unofficially, you're authorized to do what you believe is right. If you truly suspect a major humanitarian crisis, do not hesitate to deploy your force. We'll manage the fallout with the Council. Relief washed through her. She gave a tight nod. Thank you, Colonel. I won't take this lightly. When the line ended, Rhea rubbed her temples and looked around at her command crew. They were all from Earth, some from bustling spaceport cities, others from older, quieter Earth territories that had known conflict centuries before. She saw in them the same unwavering sense of moral duty she felt. They didn't join Earth's Space Force to become lackeys of a distant bureaucracy. They joined to do some good. All right, she said softly. Navigation, set course for Ravka 9. We'll see for ourselves what's happening there. A murmur of acknowledgement drifted across the bridge. The navigation officer updated the flight plan, and soon the small Earth convoy angled away from the official corridor. They had no illusions. If the Council found out they had disobeyed direct orders, the ramifications could be severe. But the alternative, doing nothing, was unthinkable. The journey to Ravka 9 took them through pockets of uncharted space. The Arathon sector was rumored to be rife with gravitational anomalies and sporadic energy storms, and such rumors proved accurate. On the third day of travel, the vigilant sensors detected a swirl of charged particles that threatened to overload the ship's navigation arrays. Rhea stood on the bridge, tension coiling in her gut. Engineering, reroute auxiliary power to the deflector shields. Keep them stable. In the background, sparks flew from a console. Lights flickered. Lieutenant Jalen cursed softly under his breath as he fought to maintain communications links among the convoy. The swirling storm buffeted the ships with waves of electromagnetic interference. Over the comms channel, Rhea heard worried voices from the captains of the other 4 vessels. Vigilant, this is the ESS Frontier. Our thrusters are experiencing intermittent power drops. Commander Caldwell, ESS Aurora, reporting a spike in reactor temperature, attempting to vent additional heat. Commander, the Hawthorne scanners are shorting out. Rhea took a steadying breath. All vessels, maintain formation. Decrease sublight velocity to half. We'll push through at minimal speed until we clear this storm. Focus on shield integrity. Slowly, Inch by inch, they pressed onward. Sparks danced around the external hull. The crew scrambled to keep vital systems online. After several agonizing hours, the swirling maelstrom receded, leaving behind only a soft glow of ionized particles drifting off the starboard bow. The battered Earth convoy resumed normal flight, though multiple decks in each vessel required repairs. In the aftermath, Rhea's second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Ginny Bale, approached her. Ginny was a seasoned officer with short-cropped hair and eyes that held a calm intelligence. "Commander, that storm shaved precious time off her schedule. We use a lot of power to maintain shields. Are you sure we should keep going? We could turn back and repair at a Concord station." Rhea surveyed the bridge's battered condition, yet something in her refused to relent. "We came this far. I can't justify giving up unless we confirm whether that distress call is real or some ghost signal. We'll do repairs as we go. Keep pushing forward." Ginny's mouth pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. They both understood. The storm was just the beginning of difficulties. No one could guess what lay ahead on Ravkanine. Another 2 days of careful navigation brought them within range of the star system that included Ravkanine. The star was smaller than Earth's sun, more orange in hue, and flares of solar plasma occasionally erupted, sending pulses across the system. Sensor sweeps indicated multiple asteroid clusters and remnants of old mining platforms drifting abandoned. Concord's data had indeed labeled the system unimportant. Despite that official line, a sense of urgency wound tighter in Rhea's chest as the signal grew stronger. They could now parse bits of audio. Static hiss was punctuated by a frantic voice speaking a dialect the translator only partially recognized. Between the bursts of incomprehensible speech, they heard standard Concord code phrases: distress, under attack, civilians, requesting immediate assistance. That made Rhea's heart clench. Under attack. By whom? The Concord had said there was no strategic threat out here. She wondered if pirates, smugglers, or a rogue empire might be preying on unsuspecting worlds. For a moment, she thought of humanity's own fraught history, how Earth had once fallen under threat from those with greater power or better weaponry. The desire to protect the vulnerable compelled her forward. "We're closing in on the planet," Lieutenant Jalen announced. "Orbit stable." Scanning the surface. On the main display, a feed of Ravka 9 appeared. It was a planet with streaks of green and brown, large swaths of landmass, and a scattering of seas. From a distance, it looked not unlike many garden worlds. But as the Vigilant entered a low orbit, the sensors detected something chilling. Pockets of devastation scarred the surface. Several city-like structures were in ruins, with columns of smoke or dust rising into the atmosphere. Rhea stared at the images, jaw tight. She stepped closer to the console. "Try to locate the source of that beacon, and let's see if we can find any signs of who did this." Ginny pointed out a cluster of signals near the eastern hemisphere. These readings suggest a few thousand life forms clustered around battered infrastructure. "I'm also detecting residual energy signatures, weapon discharges, possibly orbital bombardments." A flurry of movement across the bridge accompanied the heightened sense of alarm. Rhea weighed her options. If there was an active hostile force, the Earth convoy might be walking into a war zone. But if they turned away, they'd be abandoning whatever life remained down there. Rhea straightened her shoulders. "Prepare a landing team. I'll lead it myself. We'll take a small shuttle and see who's down there." Ginny, always the cautious one, opened her mouth to protest, but said nothing. She knew that Rhea wouldn't risk sending others first without going herself. Meanwhile, the rest of the Earth ships formed a defensive perimeter around the Vigilant. They had to be ready in case unknown hostiles arrived. Moments later, Rhea and a squad of 10 heavily armed Marines descended through Ravkan 9's atmosphere, the shuttle trembling as it broke through the wispy clouds. The planet's horizon curved gently into view. Patches of farmland ravaged by craters, broken roads winding into collapsed towns. Smoke drifted in columns, giving the landscape a somber gloom. The shuttle soared low over a hillside, scanning for a safe landing spot near the largest gathering of life forms. They touched down on a strip of relatively flat terrain, strewn with debris. Before leaving the shuttle, the group slipped on rebreathers, uncertain whether the local air was safe. The shuttle's door slid open, revealing a bleak panorama. Gray sky, shards of metal, half-demolished buildings, an entire settlement in ruin. Cautiously, the Marines fanned out, weapons at the ready, scanning every corner. At first, Rhea saw no signs of movement. Then, from behind a fractured wall, a small shape emerged. At her signal, the Marines held their fire, and Rhea stepped forward, palms raised to show no harm. What appeared was a being about half Rhea's height. It had slightly elongated limbs and mottled skin that ranged from pale green to tan. Its eyes, wide with fear, peered out from a face that had features reminiscent of a gentle amphibian species. It clutched a makeshift cloth around its torso, trembling. Rhea spoke softly, letting her translator device try to parse her words. "We're here to help. We received your distress call." The being studied her, its expression uncertain. Then it beckoned, motioning for them to follow. Soon, more figures appeared from behind walls and collapsed rooftops. They were of the same race, some with patterns of stripes on their skin, others with spots, but all carrying the same aura of desperation. Thin, malnourished, and wearing tattered garments, they stared at the humans with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Within minutes, Rhea's team was surrounded by dozens of these survivors, possibly more. She gestured to one of her Marines to offer ration packs. The translator device stuttered as it attempted to match their language to known dialects. Eventually, a partial connection was established, revealing that these people called themselves phylum, or so it sounded in the translator's approximation. A voice crackled in Rhea's earpiece. "Commander, this is the Vigilant. Are you seeing this? Our overhead scans indicate the population in the immediate area is only a fraction of what it used to be. The devastation appears widespread." Rhea pressed 2 fingers to her earpiece. "We see. Keep scanning. We'll gather intel from the ground." Turning her attention back to the cluster of phylum, Rhea tried to convey sympathy through expression and body language. Then a taller figure, an elder, judging by the heavier wrinkles, stepped forward, leaning on a broken metal rod as a makeshift cane. The translator beeped as it processed the being's words. "We called for help. Did the Concord come? Are you with them?" Rhea had to fight an urge to sigh. "Yes, well, partially. We're from Earth, a member of the Concord. We received your signal." The elder's eyes gleamed briefly. "We feared no one would answer. Weeks have passed since our broadcast began. We have been attacked." As the elder spoke, more phylum gathered, some carrying wounded or starving children. Rhea motioned for her medics to move in, distributing field medical supplies. The translator relayed each halting sentence, painting a grim picture. A powerful force had descended upon Ravkanine. The phylum were peaceful, technologically limited, living off the land and producing only basic goods. They posed no threat to outsiders. Yet one day, from the sky, came warships that battered their settlements with frightening efficiency. The elder believed these ships belonged to an empire known as Uarthelos, though that name was not widely recognized in Concord records. After the initial bombardment, the attackers sent ground troops to round up survivors. Many were taken away, presumably as forced labor or worse. The rest were left here to starve or die. The phylum had never stood a chance. Rhea felt anger coil in her stomach. Whoever these Uarthelos were, they had essentially carried out near genocide on a defenseless world. No wonder the Concord had deemed this place unimportant. They probably never expected a serious threat. Yet here was proof that predatory forces could exist outside the Concord's usual scope, preying on weaker civilizations. She spoke gently to the elder. "We have limited resources here, but we'll do what we can. My ships in orbit can provide some aid. Where are the attackers now?" "They come and go," the elder murmured. "Some of their ships remain in the skies beyond our sensor range, but we sense them. Occasionally, small craft descend to search for anything of value. Rhea's earpiece chirped again. Commander Caldwell, we've detected movement on the far side of the planet. Unidentified vessels entering low orbit. Possibly 2 to 3 large ships. Her heart sank. That could mean the UR Thalos had returned, or never fully left. Vigilant, keep your scanners on them. Prepare for evasive or defensive action if needed. We have civilians on the ground. Turning to her squad, Rhea barked orders for a quick fortification effort. They began hustling to set up portable shield generators around the area. The phylum looked on with apprehension, some of them assisting by clearing rubble. The entire time, Rhea's mind raced. If the UR Thalos possessed a large force, Earth's 5 ships would be hard-pressed to hold them off. She needed reinforcements, yet requesting them from the Concorde was likely useless given their previous apathy. Finally, she decided. She opened a priority line to Earth HQ. Colonel Bryce, can you hear me? His voice crackled in her ear. Caldwell, we copy. You're at Rafkanine? Yes, sir. We found an entire civilization under attack by a rogue empire calling themselves UR Thalos. The local population is in dire need. Our ships alone may not be enough. She heard Bryce type on a console. Acknowledged. I'm bringing up emergency procedures. Officially, the Concorde must sanction large-scale intervention. But given the threat, Earth is prepared to deploy an intervention fleet on your word. You have my word. The phylum are at risk of total annihilation. We need Earth's help. Rhea paused, the reality hitting her with brutal clarity. And we need it fast. Bryce's voice was, Grabe, we'll scramble the Omega fleet. ETA, unknown, but hopefully within days, if we can cut through the bureaucracy. Stand by for our final confirmation. Rhea ended the call and exhaled. Earth would come, but would they arrive in time? The planet's horizon was calm for the moment, but looming overhead, she imagined shadows of warships preparing to finish the job they'd started. At high altitude, the ESS Vigilant maintained geostationary orbit over Rhea's position. Lieutenant Jalen busied himself analyzing sensor sweeps. Elsewhere on the ship, the crew was torn between excitement at playing heroes for a desperate people and fear of a conflict that might outmatch them. If the UR Thalos had a full invasion force, it could easily surpass Earth's small convoy. Inside the battered settlement, Rhea orchestrated a makeshift relief operation. With each hour, more phylum emerged from hidden bunkers or decaying structures, drawn by the promise of safety. Medics treated burns, broken bones, malnutrition. Marines handed out ration bars, portable water filters, and blankets. The atmosphere, though tinged with sorrow, took on a flicker of hope that perhaps not all was lost. That hope almost shattered the next morning when the Vigilant signaled, Commander, we have multiple bogies descending from orbit on the far side. Looks like UR Thalos craft. Rhea and her squad braced themselves. The settlement scrambled to hide children in the olden cellars or basements. From vantage points on the rubble, Earth Marines hefted railguns and pulse cannons, though their coverage was thin. In the distance, the hiss of engines grew louder, and soon several dark shapes soared above the remains of a nearby city block. They were angular gunships, bearing a menacing emblem, a stylized talon gripping a broken sphere, a chilling symbol of conquest. The gunships unleashed a series of energy blasts into the ground, raising clouds of dust and sending survivors fleeing. Rhea clenched her jaw. She hated to reveal Earth's presence prematurely, but she had no choice. All units opened fire. Her Marines launched concentrated bursts of railgun slugs and laser pulses. The first UR Thalos gunship wavered under the assault, listing sideways before slamming into a half-demolished building in a fiery crash. The second veered sharply and returned fire, peppering the Earth troopers with sizzling blasts that left scorch marks on the improvised barricades. Rhea ducked behind a collapsed metal beam, adrenaline surging as she clutched her pulse rifle. Commander! Ginny's voice crackled in her earpiece from the Vigilant. We can provide orbital support, but local atmospheric interference is heavy. We'll try to target hostiles from above. Do it, Rhea growled. Moments later, A searing beam lanced down from the clouds, courtesy of the Vigilant's main plasma cannon. The second gunship erupted in a bright explosion. The thunderous roar raked the remains of the settlement. Phylum survivors cowered, uncertain whether Earth's intervention was a new danger or a salvation. When the dust settled, a final Thalos craft tried to escape, fleeing into the upper atmosphere. The Vigilance sensors tracked it, preparing to fire, but Rhea ordered them to let it go. She needed a messenger to carry word back to whomever commanded these raids. Earth was no feeble bystander. In the skirmish's aftermath, Rhea found 5 wounded Marines and a score of injured Phylum. The small victory did little to brighten her mood. She was certain there were many more Thalos forces in orbit or inbound. This was only a scouting party or a leftover garrison. Crouching beside an injured Phylum child, Rhea gently pressed a bandage to its burned arm. The translator device hung at her belt, picking up the small, whimpering sounds. She tried a comforting smile. "It's all right. You're safe now." But a voice behind her spoke in halting Concord standard. "Safe? They will come again. More ships, they always come again." She turned to see the Elder, leaning heavily on that makeshift cane. The ancient lines on the being's face spoke of deeper despair. Rhea murmured, "We've called for reinforcement from Earth. They'll get here soon. Until then, we'll defend you." The Elder's gaze flickered with uncertain gratitude. "Thank you." Days passed in tense waiting. Earth's small convoy remained in orbit, scanning vigilantly. The Marines established stronger defensive perimeters around the largest clusters of survivors, setting up portable shield domes powered by the ship's reactors. They ferried supplies between the surface and the orbiting ships, distributing them across multiple towns where other pockets of Phylum had managed to survive. In every battered village or settlement they reached, they found more wounded, more desperate families. Messages from Colonel Bryce came regularly. Negotiations with the Concord were complicated, slowed by the inertia of council politics and a reluctance to provoke a conflict with unknown enemies. But Earth had decided to act regardless. The Omega Fleet, a formidable detachment of warships typically used for high-threat situations, had mobilized and was en route. If all went well, they would arrive in time to make a difference. Of course, that if weighed heavily on Rhea's mind. She spent hours with her advisors, planning fallback points, designating evacuation routes, and distributing weapons to the Phylum who were willing to fight. A handful of younger Phylum took up rifles with shaking hands, determined to protect their families. Others refused, clinging to a deep-seated pacifism. Rhea respected their choice. No one should be forced into violence. Meanwhile, she wrestled with the moral complexity of arming civilians, but the alternative, letting them face another attack unarmed, felt far worse. Finally, on what she counted as the 6th day on Ravka 9, every sensor pinged at once with an alert. The Vigilant's voice came through her earpiece. "Commander, large vessels detected translating out of FDL near the system perimeter. Confirmed multiple warships of unknown design. They match partial scans from the gunships. Likely Thalos capital ships." Rhea's throat tightened. "How many?" "At least 5, ma'am. Possibly more behind them. They're on a direct approach to Ravka 9. She ground her teeth. "All right. Prepare for full-scale engagement. Deploy the rest of our convoy in defensive orbit. We'll do what we can until the Omega Fleet arrives." Her mind raced. Even with the Vigilant and the other 4 Earth ships, they were outnumbered. They could inflict some damage, but likely not enough to drive away an entire fleet. She steeled herself. "If we can't hold orbit, we'll withdraw to the surface with a scorched orbit tactic and hope for a rescue. Our priority is to protect the Phylum." Soon, the sky above Ravka 9 crackled with the energy signatures of ships entering lower orbit. From the vantage point of the settlement, Rhea and her Marines saw streaks of light as Thalos frigates and destroyers established a blockade. Over comm channels, they heard the Vigilant launch a desperate volley of railgun slugs and plasma beams. The return fire was swift and brutal. One Earth frigate, the ESS Aurora, took heavy hits that forced it to pull back with critical systems failing. Rhea's knuckles turned white around her rifle as the reports came in. On the surface, the phylum survivors looked up at the sky with palpable fear. They had seen these ships before, though never quite so many. Rhea tried to project confidence. "We're not abandoning you. We'll fight them here if we have to." Explosions flickered in the atmosphere, a savage dance of energy lances and railgun bursts. The other Earth ships fought valiantly, but the difference in numbers was unmistakable. The Thelos fleet pounded them, crippling 2 more vessels and leaving them adrift. The Vigilant valiantly continued the fight, hoping to buy time. Over the main comm channel, Lieutenant Jalen's voice was tight. "Commander, we can't maintain orbit. Enemy ships have targeted our propulsion systems. We're taking catastrophic damage." Rhea swallowed hard. "Evacuate if you must. Get as many as you can to the surface. We'll figure out how to keep them safe down here. Omega Fleet better arrive soon." The Vigilant didn't respond for several seconds, presumably dealing with urgent situations on board. Finally, Jalen came back. "Copy that, Commander. We'll attempt partial evac. If we lose the ship entirely, we'll make a controlled descent away from your location." Her heart ached at the prospect. The Vigilant was the flagship of her small force, a symbol of Earth's determination. But the reality was clear. The Thelos had come in force to finish subjugating Ravka-9. Earth's presence, though valiant, was outmatched by pure numbers. The fact that the Concorde had not arrived with their own reinforcements spoke volumes about their inertia. With a deafening roar, the sky split as Thelos dropped ships descended, spitting lines of fire across the battered terrain. The settlement shuddered. Some of the phylum cried out. Earth Marines rushed to man their barricades and heavy turrets, adrenaline surging. They watched ominous shapes descend from the clouds, bristling with cannons. Rhea took charge, rallying her squad. Formed defensive lines around the shield generator. "We hold them here. Civilians, stay back behind the structures. Anyone who can't fight, help the medics." Within minutes, plasma bolts rained down. Dirt and debris flew in all directions. Rhea's Marines returned fire, their heavy railguns sparking each time they launched hypervelocity slugs. The shield generator flared as it absorbed multiple blasts. For a while, it held up, but cracks soon spread across the barrier under the punishing assault. In the chaos, an Thelos transport landed behind the ridge, unloading squads of infantry clad in dark armor. They resembled a vaguely humanoid shape, but their faces were obscured by metallic masks. With precise coordination, they advanced, firing rifles that spat arcs of searing energy. Earth Marines ducked behind cover, exchanging volleys. Rhea crouched behind a half-collapsed wall, shooting methodically. At her side, a phylum youth, trembling but resolute, tried to keep pace with an older Earth soldier, covering flanks. The youth's fear was obvious, yet the courage was undeniable. In that moment, Rhea felt an overwhelming desire to protect them. The entire war seemed to crystallize around that single notion, protecting those who could not protect themselves. She witnessed Marines fall under the relentless hail of Thelos weaponry. She saw phylum huddled in corners, tears streaking their scaled cheeks. Her earpiece crackled with status reports, each sounding more dire than the last. The raw panic in the air was almost suffocating. Still, Earth's defenders pushed on, determined to make the Thelos pay dearly. Then a new voice pierced the comm channels, a voice from Earth HQ. "Commander Caldwell, do you read?" Rhea pressed a hand to her earpiece. "HQ, we read you. This is Colonel Bryce. The Omega Fleet has arrived in the Arathon sector. They're performing FDL exit maneuvers now. Expect relief in minutes." Relief warred with desperation in Rhea's chest. Would minutes be enough? The shield generator was on the brink of collapse. The Marines were pinned down by relentless crossfire. She coughed from the smoke swirling around them, ignoring the acrid taste of burnt metal. "Understood, Colonel. We'll hold as long as we can." On the horizon, the crack of weapons fire continued. Another Earth shuttle crashed in a distant field, sending flames licking at the sky. Rhea gritted her teeth, refusing to yield to despair. The next moment, a searing explosion rocked the settlement. The shield generator gave out, sparks fontaining in all directions. The barrier shimmered, then vanished. "Commander!" a Marine screamed. "Shields are gone." Without the shield, the settlement lay wide open. The Thalos infantry advanced in a wedge formation. Their overhead craft soared in for another strafing run. Rhea pressed her back against a chunk of collapsed building, trying to steady her breathing. This was it. If the Omega fleet didn't show up now, the phylum would be overrun. Suddenly, the sky lit up with brilliant streaks of energy, like dozens of comets descending. Rhea blinked. Could it be? Through the swirling dust, she glimpsed massive shapes roaring into the upper atmosphere. Earth's capital warships, bristling with rail cannons and plasma turrets. The Omega fleet was here. The lead dreadnought unleashed a concentrated barrage that scorched across the heavens. Thalos vessels in orbit took punishing hits, their hulls disintegrating under the onslaught. Fire and debris rained, and confusion rattled the enemy ranks. Rhea's earpiece crackled with the triumphant voice of an Earth admiral. "This is Admiral Kuroda of the ESS Dauntless, commanding the Omega fleet. All Earth units, stand by for close orbital support." Another volley hammered the Thalos cruisers, forcing them to break formation. Over the next few minutes, the Omega fleet methodically drove the invaders back. The difference in capability was stark. While Earth might be a new Concord member, its advanced weapons technology had been honed through centuries of internal conflicts, ironically turning them into formidable defenders now that they had ventured into deep space. The sight of the Thalos retreating from orbit bolstered the morale of Rhea's battered defenders on the surface. The gunships that had been strafing the settlement abruptly pulled away, presumably to regroup with their main force. Rhea seized the chance. Counterattack now. Push them back. Marines and phylum fighters rallied, surging forward in a ragged counteroffensive. With the overhead threat temporarily eased, they had enough momentum to rout the Thalos infantry squads. Gunfire echoed between broken walls and abandoned streets. Rhea's pulse hammered in her ears as she fired into a line of black-armored soldiers. Several toppled, while the others scrambled back. Victory seemed possible. In a final flourish, Earth's Omega fleet hammered the largest Thalos destroyer from orbit, forcing it into a tumbling retreat. The enemy fleet realized that reinforcements from Earth were simply too numerous and too well-armed. One by one, their ships pulled away, jumping to FTL or hiding behind asteroids. Within an hour, the sky cleared. The massive forms of Earth's warships stood vigil over Ravka 9. For the first time since landing, Rhea felt her shoulders unwind. She gazed around the settlement, at the battered bodies and smoldering wreckage. Grim though the scene was, there were survivors. The phylum had not been annihilated. Earth's intervention, late as it was, had turned the tide. Rescue operations began at once. The Omega fleet dispatched medical frigates and relief shuttles, touching down across the planet to deliver emergency supplies. Meanwhile, the battered Earth convoy regrouped, each vessel battered but salvageable. The ESS Vigilant had sustained heavy damage, but managed to limp into a stable orbit. Engineers from the Omega fleet boarded her to begin immediate repairs. The phylum, stunned by the abrupt end to the fighting, emerged from hiding. Some wept at the sight of Earth soldiers distributing food packs and setting up field hospitals. Others clung to each other in silent relief. Wherever Rhea walked, she was met with thanks in a language she barely understood. Yet the gratitude was unmistakable. Her translator device picked up phrases like light in the darkness and angels from the stars. It was humbling. Among the wounded Marines, the casualty list was sobering, but many had survived thanks to swift medical intervention. Rhea made it a point to visit the field tents, listening to the moans of the injured, offering words of encouragement. She had never liked being called a hero. This was just duty, as far as she was concerned. Earth had the power, so it had the responsibility. After 3 days of intense rescue efforts, the settlement began to regain some semblance of order. Admiral Kuroda personally came to the surface for a short inspection. She was a tall, imposing figure with streaks of gray in her hair, a testament to many years of command. Standing by Ria's side, she surveyed the ruins. A group of Phylum approached them, led by the elder with a makeshift cane. The translator word. The elder bowed slightly. "We cannot repay you for this mercy. We thought we were forgotten by the stars." Admiral Kuroda responded in a firm yet kind tone. "Earth does not abandon those in need. We came as soon as we could. We are sorry it took this long." It was a simple exchange, but its significance weighed heavily. Ria realized that in saving the Phylum, Earth might have violated multiple Concord directives. She suspected the fallout would come soon. But at that moment, she couldn't find it in herself to regret a single choice. Sure enough, once Ravka 9 was secured, the Concord made its displeasure known. A small detachment of council representatives arrived in a diplomatic corvette, calling for immediate hearings. Commander Ria Caldwell was summoned to justify her unauthorized excursion, her direct defiance of Concord instructions. The hearing convened in a commandeered section of the planet's only surviving municipal hall. Councillor Verim, that same official who had dismissed the original distress call, presided. He glowered from behind a tall podium. Ria stood in front, flanked by Admiral Kuroda and Colonel Bryce. A handful of Phylum, including the elder, watched from the side, still uncertain how these proceedings might affect their fate. "Commander Caldwell," Verim began, "you stand accused of insubordination. The Arathon sector is not under Earth's direct jurisdiction, and the Council did not sanction this operation. Do you acknowledge that you acted against standing orders?" Ria kept her posture steady. "Yes, Councillor Verim. I freely admit that I diverted from the assigned patrol route. However, I did so in response to a Concord-coded distress call. The population here was facing genocide, which we have now prevented." Verim's mandibles twitched in annoyance. The Council did not deem the cost-benefit ratio favorable. That was its prerogative. You placed the entire Concord in potential conflict with an unknown hostile force. Admiral Kuroda cut in, voice cold. "With all due respect, Counselor, the unknown hostile force turned out to be a powerful empire that had no qualms slaughtering innocents. Commander Caldwell's intervention saved hundreds of thousands of lives, possibly more. And the Omega Fleet's arrival forced the Thelos to retreat. Had we done nothing, the Phylum would be extinct." The Counselor scowled. "Be that as it may, we cannot have individual Concord members launching unilateral military operations. There are protocols." This time, Colonel Bryce responded, "Those protocols appear flawed if they permit genocide to go unchallenged. Earth demands a revision of these guidelines. We also note that the presence of the Omega Fleet has likely spared the Concord from further embarrassment, as the Thelos might have expanded to more systems." A tense silence fell. Councillor Verim consulted a data slate, presumably weighing the political ramifications of punishing Ria. Then he sighed. "Commander Caldwell, we shall issue an official reprimand for overstepping your authority. However, given the extenuating circumstances, the Council will not pursue further disciplinary action." Ria stifled a small smile. This was the face-saving compromise she had expected. The Council needed Earth's help to fend off potential Thelos aggression in the future. Punishing Earth's officer severely could spark a rift in the Concord that benefited no one. Verim continued. "As for the Phylum, they will be granted temporary protection status under the Concord humanitarian clauses. Earth shall bear the primary responsibility for their relocation or reconstruction efforts." The elder exhaled a breath of relief. Ria gave a subtle nod of gratitude. The hearing ended with an uneasy sense of closure. The official record would show that Commander Caldwell was reprimanded, but Earth's success in defending Ravka 9 could not be denied. Concord politics would churn on, but at least the Phylum were safe. Over the following weeks, Earth's ships aided in stabilizing the planet, setting up water purification systems and beginning reconstruction in the most heavily damaged regions. Meanwhile, the Council deliberated behind closed doors about the future of the Erathon sector. Rumors suggested that, in light of Earth's decisive action, some in the Council advocated elevating Earth from partial membership to full membership. Others staunchly opposed it, fearing Earth's rashness. Rhea found the politics exhausting. Every day, she was pulled between coordinating relief efforts, overseeing repairs to the Vigilant, and fielding a constant stream of bureaucratic nonsense from Arcturus Station. Still, she pressed on, motivated by the countless phylum lives that now depended on Earth's presence. Each dawn on Ravka, 9 brought new glimpses of renewal. Children playing in the rubble, Marines and phylum working side by side to clear roads, small pockets of farmland being prepared for replanting. There was a quiet nobility to this joint effort. Rhea found herself learning more about phylum culture, how they revered the natural world, how they believed the planet had a living spirit, how they'd never developed advanced weaponry because they'd never wanted to. It made the Thalos cruelty all the more painful to comprehend. One morning, as the sun rose over shattered spires in the distance, Rhea walked along a makeshift camp filled with phylum families receiving medical attention. She paused at the bedside of an injured phylum woman who'd lost her mate to the initial bombardment. 2 Marine medics were checking the woman's vitals. The translator beeped softly, and the phylum said something that came through as, "We are alive, because of you." Rhea's throat tightened. She reached out, lightly touching the woman's hand. "No, it's because of the strength you already had. We just answered your call." The woman's eyes glistened. "We had lost hope that anyone would hear our cry. The Concord, they never came." Rhea managed a small, sad smile. "The Concord is learning. Earth is trying to change how they see things." Their conversation ended as the medics moved to the next patient. Rhea left the tent, stepping into a brisk morning breeze. Beyond the camp, she saw a line of Earth supply shuttles roaring overhead, delivering construction materials. Life had a way of going on, even in the ruins of war. At midday, Admiral Kuroda summoned Rhea to a briefing near the edge of a newly cleared area. A large temporary command dome had been set up, humming with activity. Inside, Colonel Bryce and several staff officers pored over holographic maps of the star system. Kuroda waved Rhea closer. "Commander," the Admiral said, "we have reason to believe the Thalos have regrouped outside the Erathon sector. They might return with a larger fleet, or they might raid another poorly defended world." The Council has been slow to respond, but after some backroom negotiations, it looks like they'll authorize a joint Concord Earth task force to secure these fringe systems. Rhea nodded. "That's good news, if it's true. Let's just hope it's not too late for other worlds." "What about the phylum?" Colonel Bryce folded his arms. "We've arranged official Concord protection status for them. We'll also station a small Earth garrison here to ensure Thalos can't just swoop in again. The Council still insists Earth foot most of the bill, but that's a price we're willing to pay." Relief washed over Rhea. The phylum deserved at least that much. She took a moment to absorb the swirling display of star systems. Her eyes lingered on Ravka 9's lonely orbit. Earth's presence had changed the entire fate of this planet, and potentially the entire region. The cry for help had indeed brought the might of Earth's military. She felt a flicker of pride, tempered by the sobering reality that war had exacted a harsh toll. "Admiral," Rhea began softly, "how many casualties did we sustain in total?" Kuroda's expression hardened. "Too many. But if we hadn't come, there would be no one left on this planet. The difference you made is immeasurable." They shared a moment of silence, pondering the sacrifices of the Marines and Starship crews, as well as the phylum who had perished before help arrived. War, Rhea thought, was never glorious, but sometimes it was necessary to stand between the powerless and the malevolent. Earth understood that lesson well. By the time the Earth contingent prepared to depart Ravka 9, the planet looked less like a smoking ruin and more like a place on the mend. Temporary shelters dotted the landscape, gleaning power from solar arrays. The climate was mild, the soil fertile enough for future harvests. Ad hoc labs tested ways to restore farmland and rebuild homes. Every day, more survivors emerged from hidden underground bunkers or distant hills, slowly returning to begin anew. Rhea spent her final afternoon on the surface walking through one of the improvised markets that had sprung up. Phylum families exchanged goods, mostly leftover agricultural produce or handmade crafts from salvage materials. Earth soldiers passed by, sometimes trading ration bars for local trinkets. Laughter occasionally broke the air, a gentle melody of interspecies camaraderie forming in the midst of devastation. The elder approached, leaning on that cane, smiling faintly. The translator caught his words. "We cannot stop saying thank you. But what will happen now?" Rhea considered her response carefully. "We'll leave behind a protective force. You'll be under Concord security, and Earth is pushing for new policies that value lives over cost. The galaxy is big, but we won't let your voices be lost again." The elder nodded slowly. "You have given us hope. That is a treasure beyond any measure." Rhea bowed her head in respect. She felt that odd mix of gratitude and guilt, knowing that so many had died before Earth even arrived. But if the phylum could find hope again, perhaps the future would hold fewer tragedies. That evening, under the reddish glow of the setting sun, the Earth ships gathered in a high orbit. Admiral Kuroda's war fleet still ringed the planet, ensuring no UR Thalos remnant dared approach. The Vigilant, partially restored, was ready to head home for a more thorough refit. Rhea's crew busied themselves with final checks. Inside the Vigilant's bridge, Rhea settled into her command chair. The environment felt both familiar and changed. She had grown from this experience in ways she couldn't fully articulate. Lieutenant Jalen gave her a nod from the comm station. "All systems go, Commander," he reported. "We're ready to break orbit on your order." She gazed at the planets spinning below them. "Then take us out, Lieutenant. Lay in a course for the Terran station. We have reports to file, after all." He couldn't help a grin. "Yes, ma'am." As the Vigilant and the other Earth vessels began to pull away, the swirling orange star of Ravka, 9 shrank behind them. Rhea felt a pang of longing. Though this place had been harshly scarred by war, it had also become a testament to the power of compassion. In a galaxy overshadowed by political agendas and cost-benefit analyses, Earth had chosen to step in, brandishing its new but potent might on behalf of a voiceless people. And for that, Rhea thought, no reprimand or censure from the Concord could tarnish her pride. She'd follow the same path all over again if she had to. Perhaps that was Earth's biggest contribution to this vast tapestry of species, a steadfast refusal to ignore the cries of those who suffered. She hoped that one day, the rest of the Concord would follow suit, that the bureaucrats would learn the lesson Earth had paid for in blood and tears. Drifting deeper into space, the Vigilant set her course for the next chapter in humanity's evolving story among the stars. One where a single cry for help could rouse an entire fleet to rally, proving beyond doubt that some values are worth fighting for.